Okay. Good morning, Briots.
Good afternoon from my side.
Yes. Um, so today's question is, this is a very interesting time that people have an unprecedented amount of time with themselves. And it's ideal if you want to be self-reflective and start dealing a little bit more efficiently and effectively and happily with your own self. This is a really good time to do that. I mean, when does this happen? That everybody has a significant amount of time to be able to be self-reflective. So on that note, I have a direction I'd like to go in, and that is, the question is, what would people have to give up or start doing that in regards to adopting more of a conscious lifestyle or a yogic lifestyle or a transformational lifestyle, which really means being more aligned with who you are. So do I need to define that question better, or can you take a swipe at your answer right now?
Yeah, I think it's quite clear. It's quite a loaded question, and it's something that one can discuss for days and weeks on end.
Uh-huh.
But to me, the main inhibiting factor is body consciousness, which means that we identifying with this body, with this physical vessel, as being the self. Like, I am this or I am that. I am a white male. I am an artist. I'm a musician. I'm eccentric. I'm introvert. I'm extrovert. I'm white. I'm black. I'm American. I'm African. Afrikaans, English, and there's a near unlimited amount of things that you can put on that list that you can identify with. And so identify the body as a self or body consciousness, and the result of that is that one's whole life's endeavor is trying to attain happiness and satisfaction through gratifying your senses. And we see
that's the goal.
in the world is that the primary things that people then pursue is sex, money, and power.
Okay. So what is having said that, is we're body conscious, that we're looking to serve the senses or feed the senses or our desires, and that I am my identity, which is I'm African American, Afrikaans, English, etc., Indian, and then these are kind of some examples of where we're looking from or experiencing the world from, or what we see as being important. And then the pursuit is of sex, money, and power. Is that about right?
Yeah, some stuff pretty
So
well.
what did you do, like making this personal, when you first discovered transformation, when you first discovered that something wasn't working, and that you wanted to do something different? What did you start doing differently? Do you remember what you were behaving in a certain way, and then you started behaving in a different way? What does that look like?
Well, for one, I think I started asking more questions about things. I started questioning even the clarity in which the people around me actually see. So one thing I realized was that there weren't really a lot of people, if any, around me that I could actually approach and even ask these questions that I had to. At least for myself,
Yes.
when I was going through that kind of initial awakening, then I experienced incredible night terrors and panic attacks, especially at night. And if I would express these things to my friends, they would usually just be like, you're just thinking too much about things and you're just focusing on the
man up, bro.
Relax, dude, come on. It's like you're killing my buzz here. Like, But I couldn't drop them. Just somehow or other, what I was feeling was too intense and strong, and I was not able to drop it. And when I started practicing meditation um, at the time, and types of techniques of reflection and introspection, of going to into my inner kind of self and seeing my white and black qualities, then I would say that that was a good start. Where I actually started and trying to honestly and objectively reflect on what I am right now. I think that was a good start. And even if I would see something which I didn't really like, I didn't just press it away as a matter of instinct, which is generally the case. What you when you're looking at yourself and you kind of start getting an idea that actually I'm not a very honest person, just as an example, then that feeling that you get is not very nice. Generally, people just push it away. And with that feeling, you push away that information also. But instead of doing that, actually sitting and thinking, okay, maybe this is true. Am I a dishonest person? I think going through that and then coming to a conclusion that actually I'm not as honest as I thought I was. Yeah. Right.
I'm just not saying anything so that I am not able to hear you very well because
Right.
it's harmonicizing on my side.
Okay.
So I'm just not saying anything for a second for let it to catch up. So would you not say that that's kind of the first threshold, is being able to, because I think, you know, you're really onto something, is that you started asking the questions of what am I? You started looking inside at your light and your dark, and that that you started looking at some things and they weren't very nice, is what you said, and that a lot of people kind of push that stuff away and don't look at it and don't want to look at it. Isn't that the first threshold of that? When you look inside, you're going to find some things that you're already scared of. That's why you're not looking there.
Yeah.
And that there is a tendency to push things away, to not look, to not feel, to be afraid of it. Would you agree that that's kind of the first threshold?
Yeah, I think for many people, if not all, that might be their first introduction to embarking on a path like that. At least for me, and for many people I know, that was the first threshold. Yes.
And it's not like that threshold goes away. I can open up to me, and then start looking. And the reason why I'm looking is that I'm actually willing to take the chance that if I look at myself, I have a feeling that I don't believe, there's a little feeling inside of me that feels like there's more, that there's something that feels good about being me, that I'm willing to risk looking at what's negative on the chance that it's either not real, or that it's not all of me. For whatever reason, I'm willing to look at it and examine it.
Mm.
And most people don't want to open Pandora's box because they think that something's wrong with them, but they're not. They don't completely believe it.
Yeah.
And if we start looking at this stuff, I'm going to get evidence, empirical evidence, that there really is something wrong with me.
Yeah.
I think that's what keeps people out of that box. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yes, it can be a very painful experience, and generally people equate pain with negativity. That pain
Yes.
is a negative attrition to that experience or quality, whereas pain is actually just like anything else. It actually doesn't have a quality. We, by our mind, infer upon it some meaning, and generally in the Western world, pain is given a negative meaning. But I think with a more holistic approach, and especially a spiritual perspective, pain can be seen as a very powerful force of transformation, which in that case is actually very positive. And like in
When
my,
you looked at yourself, when
yeah,
you looked inside, so now back to your personal experiences, when
yeah,
you started looking at yourself, and you realized you weren't a very honest person, so there was feelings that were probably negative that you were used to putting somewhere like in a little box and under the bed,
Yeah.
as opposed to looking at it directly. And when you started looking at this stuff directly, was the negative belief experience actually true or real, or did it have like?
Can you repeat that last sentence? It cut out a bit. Was it true or
When
real?
you looked, yeah, when you looked at it, was it real? What did you find when you looked at when you started looking at these negative emotions? How did you reconcile them?
Yeah, they were real. They were in fact real. When I just took it, accepted it theoretically, and I just observed myself as I'm dealing in certain situations, and kind of what's the word, collecting data, and then comparing that data to this hypothesis, then it actually turned out to be true. So
So
initially,
it was true that there is something. So,
yeah, there was definitely
so
a whole array of things.
you cut out a whole bunch. So
Yeah, a whole list of things.
I'm waiting for it to catch up. So is when you looked inside, the fears that you had, the negative experience of yourself, and the fears that you had, was it real?
Yes, they were real.
The fears were real.
Yeah,
It wasn't illusionary. So there is something wrong with you.
yeah. It wasn't just something I was.
There is something wrong with
There was.
you. Oh, what?
It was that the person that I was not the person who I thought I was.
Right.
I was not the person
Okay.
I need to be, and who I
Yeah.
was.
Well, you were your identity. Yeah, but that's not what I'm asking you. What I'm asking you is, that's true, is that there's a false identity and you realized it was false.
Right?
Okay, so what I'm asking you is that when you were having negative thoughts that you weren't being honest about, what were you, like, give me an example of, here's one of mine, I'll make it easier, is that, there's an experience of, I'm maybe not good enough, or maybe I'm not liked, or maybe I'm not the person that I need to be
Okay.
accepted.
Yes.
So I'm having these feelings and these thoughts and these reflections. And did you have something like that?
Okay, I understand where you're going. Yes, I did, and I found
And were
that,
they real?
that a lot of them, most of them, they were not real. Like one thing that I felt, because I had really intense social anxiety, for example, I thought people didn't like me or that people didn't appreciate what I'm saying. But when I just got over that and I just started kind of expressing myself more freely, I actually realized people really like my company and they like what I'm saying and they actually listen to what I say and that they appreciate me and what I'm offering. And it was quite a relief.
Right.
But yes, in that sense, I can understand.
So
I did. It was not real.
yeah. So and I agree. Is just that, so that there's when you tested it, but the interesting thing is that where you started off is there was a belief in your case that maybe people wouldn't like you and maybe they wouldn't listen to you, and that's where we started. And that keeps us, like, these kinds of feelings make most people feel uncomfortable, and they put it in a box and slide it under the bed and not deal with it.
Yeah.
So you, at some point, you decided this is the first threshold of transformation, and that my finding is that I've known for a long time that people are not turning and meeting themselves, and they're not facing themselves, and they're not facing their emotions.
Mm.
There is people are numbing out, and I don't mean with prescriptions, and I don't mean with alcohol, and I don't mean with cannabis, and I'm not talking about self-medicating, but they are doing that too. But it's like they're numbing out from their own feelings and from their own experience of themselves.
Yeah.
And that, and that, I think, is what I think that it's, I've always just gone on to, well, wouldn't you rather be transformational? And this is what it's going to do for you. And this is what you're going to learn about yourself. And then now at this place of a pandemic, and that we are actually in quarantine, is just the fact that that's happening, and that it does it gives us an opportunity to be self-reflective. We have a lot of time right now.
Yeah.
Is really to, I'm going to start emphasizing and doing courses on, for example, on not numbing yourself. Not, this is, speaking to it directly, is that people are numbing themselves because they're afraid of what they're feeling. And whatever you're feeling, whatever it is, I promise you it's a lie. There's an illusion in it. There's nothing wrong with you. You're a perfect you.
Yeah.
And there's nothing for you to actually be concerned about who you are. And I think that being able to start, and I can prove it as well, is really turn and face yourself. And it doesn't mean you have to deal with all of it. Just, walk a couple steps, and the very first rock that you see, where it's a negative emotion of some kind, a belief of some kind, just a little one, you pick it up and you get it onto the table. And then it's about finding the lie, that's in the middle of that negative belief, that negative feeling about you or about the world. You wouldn't be numbing unless there is something. So, and I still have things that I need to keep facing. So that's pretty much the human condition. So once you get that little rock up onto the table, if you can't find the lie in it, I can. I know how to find the lie and all, because I know it's illusionary and I know what the human condition is. And we're all pretty much believing the same things within a spectrum or a continuum. And it's a skill. It's a skill to be able to see a lie in that. So if you don't have the skill, find somebody who does. But I really think now that numbing out is no longer, it no longer needs to be an option. If there's a time to stop numbing out, this is it. And if I say that all of that you're feeling in there that's negative is an illusion, then maybe it's worth your time and effort to be able to, stop, turn, and face yourself and meet yourself. What do you think about this numbing out thing?
I think it's something that most people do as a coping mechanism. Especially, it might be found more amongst male people than female in my experience I've seen. Because women are naturally a bit more in tune with their emotions, but not necessarily. But as a kind of generalization, I think it's quite accurate. But that people are not trained or raised as children how to deal with their emotions. That generally we are told as children growing up in our generation and before, and actually even all of the ones before us, is that to be really callous and you just do what you're told, but you're not really guided through your emotional experiences that you're having. You're just told that you're supposed to do certain things, but you're not told or trained how to reconcile the way you feel about those things. And then then as adults, you're based at emotionally, you're like pre-teen or maybe teen like level, and you're stuck there. And you don't know how to deal and process, or you don't even know how to identify what you're feeling, let alone deal with it and put a name to it.
Yeah.
I am feeling angry. Like, how many adults can actually say that and actually identify that within themselves? Not just when they're busy beating somebody up, but just when the feeling inside them comes up, that they immediately can recognize that anger has just stepped in my frame of experience. Or I'm sad, or I'm disappointed, or I'm upset, or I'm frustrated, I'm feeling powerless. So we're not taught to do that. So as adults, when these feelings come up, it's a very much of an unknown for us. And then the natural instinct of dealing with unknowns is that you try to kill it or you run away from it. So I think in that we numb ourselves, yes. So we make ourselves callous. There's like a big fat callus around our heart, which makes us help to cope with the way that heart feels. But it doesn't make the feeling go away. It's just a coping mechanism.
Say that again. There's what around our heart?
A callus.
Callus around our heart. Okay.
Yes.
Which means there's pain. There's a rub.
Yes.
There's a rub.
Exactly.
Okay. So just to speak to what you've said already is when you talked about that women are more connected to their feelings than men are, which is true. But women are numbing out as well. There's a whole bunch of stuff that they're not dealing with. And I'll just speak to people directly. You know when you're numbing out. You know when you're not dealing with your feelings. You know when you're actually putting things under the bed. You know when the words that you used is that when you're trying to kill it or run away. It's like, you know when you're doing that. Male or female, whoever you are, you know when you're numbing out. Because everything you need to know is inside of you. And and when you said there is no guidance, I absolutely have to agree with you. There is no guidance. Because the adults, when I was born and when I was young, they weren't dealing with their negative bias either. They weren't dealing with the negative thoughts inside of them. They put it under the bed. And they had coping mechanisms that they taught everybody else. So we started, nobody's, you just look on the playground and, grade 6 or grade 7, people are going, you're not going, oh, well, I don't feel powerful and I don't feel good about who I am and I have these strange thoughts in my head. Everybody's going, I've got it all worked out. I'm the star, look at all the things that I can do. And, and that there's a bravado to cover up that what's going on underneath that is the negative bias.
Yeah.
The negative bias is a survival mechanism. It's, all the negative bias is doing is trying to protect you, and it's reflecting back to you whatever your fears are. The negative bias it's like breathing. It happens without you having to create it. There's little thoughts that are coming into your head to protect you, which are really useful when when you're in the jungle and there's a saber-toothed tiger and your attention goes to what's disturbing as opposed to listening to the waterfall. The people that weren't tuned to the negative experience in their environment as opposed to just listening to the waterfall became lunch. So that's what our negative bias was for, is to whatever's negative in the background, our attention goes to. So, and then it's trying to protect us. And we have no guidance.
Yeah.
We actually think that negative bias, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with them, what's wrong with it, and all of the reasons why it won't work out, that is woven into our conversation in our head. We think that that's, us talking, and we try and stop it and manage it and kill it, but we're afraid of it.
Yeah.
And all it is a reflection of your own fears being presented back to you saying, you got this. Do you see that this is happening? Okay. And you got it. Yeah, I got it. And then, as opposed to listening to it like a television set and being mesmerized by it, and what you focus on expands. So we end up having this really, unenjoyable experience of this inner dialogue and what our fears are, because we have no guidance of what that is, where it comes from, and what you can do about it. Because in every master, in every discipline, spiritual discipline, transformation, and transcendental is going, they face that. And every last one of them tells the story of how everything that they saw inside of in that conversation in their head about themselves and the world, about what's not working and what's not good about them and what's not good about the world, is illusionary. All of the teachings are about how that's illusionary. So there's nothing that can hurt you there, and we have no guidance about that. So my suggestion is, and my thought is that it's now time, if you want to catch yourself, it's not about, here's a path over here. It's about what you're doing right now is numbing out. And when you're numbing out, find out why you're numbing out.
Yeah.
Turn and face yourself and start looking at what's the first thing that you can get up onto the table to look at. You now want to be conscious. It's now time to be conscious. You don't have to. It's not for everybody. I'm going to do workshops and I'm going to do one-on-ones on not numbing out and turning and facing yourself. If you want to come to a workshop about not numbing, even if it's online or one-on-ones, if you want to do that, I'm available to do that. And if you don't want to, if you're like, no, I'm quite happy with how things are going, great. You should keep doing that. Any thoughts about all the stuff I said there?
Yeah, I think this, the way that we have been raised has really conditioned us in this way, and that our relationship with pain needs to change. That I mentioned that a little bit earlier as well, that if one looks at the physical body like as a biological system, that pain serves as a protective measure. For example, if you're leaning and you put your hand on a hot plate on the stove, then there's pain, and the pain is basically something telling you, my dear sir, there's something that requires your immediate attention. there's something wrong. It requires your attention. And in the same way, when we're experiencing pain or even suffering, like, then it's similarly, it's a mechanism of the soul or the universe telling you that there's something wrong and it requires your attention. Please look at it and deal with it accordingly. But we have put such
I love your analogy.
we got such a negative thank you, stigma to it, that we tend to want to put it away because it's either seen as weakness or because our pursuit of happiness in this world involves eliminating all kinds of suffering. So then when we come across suffering, regardless of what circles you're in, materialistic or spiritual, then it's regarded as an unwanted element in your life. So you want to make away with it. But somebody who's actually on an authentic spiritual path, they will embrace it and they'll use that as a catalyst, which can propel them further in their development of themselves, or discovery of themselves, rather. Yeah. So that's one thing.
Very active. It's very active over there today.
Yeah, they are.
Let me ask you a question. So, when I said that all of the masters that I've read about and all of the disciplines, the transformational disciplines, spiritual disciplines, all of them talk about that facing yourself and facing your fears, and that they're illusionary, that there is a lie inside of every one of those things that you don't want to look at, and you want to move away from the pain and therefore suffer. Would you agree that that's true in your journeys, in your experience?
Yes, I agree with that.
So is there anything you can say about that? Because I really think that that's the if we have to emphasize a part of the path, I think it's the path of somebody that has a habit of numbing themselves out and not looking at what they're feeling. You're actually feeling these things. It's inside of your body. It's happening for a reason. You're not feeling anything if you don't have a belief or a definition, you're not having a feeling.
Yeah.
So there is a belief involved, and that there's something within that belief that is a lie. So being able, if we're going to accent a part of the transformational path, I think being very careful and kind and soft and distinct about someone that is not is numbing out and not feeling what they're feeling, and that everybody that's on the spiritual transformational path, I would say, has stopped and faced themselves of what they were afraid of, that they didn't need to be afraid of that to keep going. Because if they can't dispel that as a lie or not true, then they can't keep going on the spiritual path. They need to shut it down and put it back in a box, and it goes back under the bed. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And usually people will try and postpone it or avoid entering into it because of the way it makes you feel. But the fact remains is that it's not going to go away unless you deal with it. So you can deal with it today or tomorrow or next year or in 10 years' time or in the next lifetime if you believe that. But you're going to have to deal with it all the same. You cannot avoid it if you want to go further than what you are, where you are now. So, for example, in my experience, when I realized that that I'm crippled by social anxiety, this is when I was 19 in university, and
Yes.
I had to talk to people. I didn't know how to have and hold a conversation, and I was a bit freaked out about that. But this same point occurred to me. It's like, oh well, I guess normally you would have learned these social skills by now, but I don't have any of that. But now I have to start somewhere. So then I just did it, and I just put myself into situations, social situations, where I could not just escape from. So I was forced to learn how to deal with social situations, like sitting next to a person and talking to them and having to say something, or start a conversation, like meet somebody new and just start talking about them without thinking about what this person is thinking about me. And it was incredibly difficult to start with. But the more I did it, it actually became easier quite fast. And but you have to start somewhere. You have to start. Everyone has to start somewhere. And even if you are underdeveloped in a certain aspect of your life, um, it doesn't matter. You still have to start somewhere, and it's worth it. And also, the truth is that it never ends. Another pitfall where people who have embarked on a spiritual path for many years, um, they think because I've already done that work, that's done. But actually, those things can come back. You have to keep housework, house maintenance. You can't just clean once and then, oh, my house is clean. I cleaned it last year, it's fine. It's like the dust accumulates again. So you have to perform maintenance. And in this way, people in spiritual circles often they do what's called spiritual bypassing. It's because they think they've done the work, which they might have done before, but they have not maintained it. And then meanwhile, some more cockroaches have crept inside the kitchen. And because they're not really going into it again, they've not noticed it even. So I think that's also for somebody who's...
So you said a few things.
Hmm.
So just to address a couple things that you said is the first one is you can deal with this now, or it's not going away. So you can deal with this now, or you can deal with it in 10 years, or you can deal it in the next lifetime. What I'm saying is that for those of you that intuitively feel that this is a very special time right now while you're at home, that this might be a time where the world is asking you to stop numbing out. I think it would be good for the world and good for yourself that if that you took that endeavor on. So under normal circumstances, I'd say, yeah, you can deal with this now or in 5 years or in 10 years. I think this is extraordinary times. And
Yeah.
I think that it calls for, it's time to stop numbing out, people. It's
Yeah.
time to actually turn and face yourself. And and then you said spiritual bypassing. Is that, so what is, I'm familiar with the term, but now I want you to drill into it and go, what actually is happening if somebody is spiritually bypassing? What are they actually doing?
In essence, they're cheating themselves, knowingly or unknowingly,
By doing what? By
by
doing what? What are they actually doing?
by not being authentic with themselves about what their intentions are or what it is that they're actually doing and the effect they are having because of it.
So there's two things that I would point to is that they're not looking at their motivations or drivers in the moment of, what it is, what's driving them to want or do something, even micro drivers,
Mm.
and the feelings that they have behind that are driving those micro drivers, and the belief that is behind that. So they're not looking at their beliefs. They're not looking at that they have motivations to, to avoid, motivations to eat, the motivations to sleep. I mean, there's a lot of motivations to do something. And so there's the truth, the meanings, the feelings, and I don't remember what the first one is. So would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's a nice way of putting it as well.
So you also talked about is that if you're anybody that's on the transformational journey knows that the job's not done ever, and that every time you are able to face what you're feeling and that it's negative, and that you're brave enough to face it anyway, because as soon as you start realizing, that it's illusionary, that it's not true, that it's easy to realize that the next one might not be true. And when you've done 10 of them, where you've faced 10 emotions and beliefs, and that you've been able to dispel them as absolutely untrue to you, it gives you a whole bunch of room to be who you are and explore at a completely deeper level. But what happens before that, the threshold again, is when you haven't started that journey, or or that you're scared again, is being able to go, I'm going to face this and I don't know that it's not true.
Mm.
I don't have any experience of that. Is that the risk, everybody has to go, well, I'm sick and tired of, feeling like this, and I have a sense that I might be greater than all this nonsense that I'm thinking and feeling, and I'm willing to take a risk at looking at who I am, because that's really what you're asking. Who am I?
Mm.
And there's something that feels good that when I just be with myself or experience myself, there's something good and powerful. And then there's some other feelings and stuff that aren't good. And I'm willing to focus on those as well and be able to, and test them for their validity. The things that are negative, you want to get them up on the table and you want to test them to see if they're actually valid.
Mm.
And there is a process, there's a transformational process to be able to do that, and that to determine if it's valid or not for yourself. And then, but you have to understand the system. You have to understand where it's coming from. You have to understand, you know, how the human condition works. You have to understand the negative bias. And then it starts making sense. Would you, any thoughts about all that?
Yeah, it's how do I put it? I think what I one point you made that I liked a lot was that it's an ongoing process. That it's not something that ever stops, and just at every moment you're just having to really check yourself. But also as a practice, one should also take like um, have a regular interval that one actually sits down and does introspection. And I think something like once a fortnight or every 2 weeks is a great interval to sit down. If you're into something like fasting or something, then doing it on a day where you're fasting is makes it even more potent. And and it should be part of any healthy spiritual practice and routine where you do introspection. So you have like what I call active introspection. We actually sit down and you make time to spend time on going inside. And then you have passive introspection, which is where you're just trying to be honest about yourself from moment to moment and just kind of seeing what is actually going on inside when something happens and applying that. And then there's things will also come out when you do active introspection. So then there's two ways that you
I have
can.
a question for you. I have a question. So now that you're on your spiritual journey, is there, you might be afraid of some of the feelings that you have. You might have fearful feelings about who you are or where your life is going. You might have those. I have those. But it's like, do you ultimately, are you afraid of anything that you're feeling? Are you ultimately afraid of it, or of anything that you're feeling inside of you?
You're asking me personally?
Yes.
Me personally.
I might have fearful experiences, but I personally don't think, I'm not afraid of any of that stuff. I know none of it can hurt me. And if I'm afraid, I just haven't dealt with it completely yet.
Yes.
But it's like, or I'm dealing with it again. But I know absolutely that it's illusionary, that there's a lie in it. It's not true about me or the world. And
Okay.
that if I'm still feeling with, I still haven't dealt with it completely yet.
For myself, I don't feel like I really have fear for anything because I've really worked through a lot. But at the same time, as life goes on, then I do experience fear. It doesn't mean that, and then it's just something that comes up as a nature of like any other emotion you might feel, and I deal with it. And then, depending on how much energy I put into dealing with it, it can be very short lived. But generally speaking, I don't really experience a lot of fear at all.
I'm going to refine the question. I just got it said. So, are you afraid of feeling fear?
No, I'm not afraid of feeling fear.
That's exactly where I'm getting to. I'm not afraid of feeling fear either. I'm not afraid of exploring it. I'm not afraid of my fears, because all the fears that I've dealt with, I've faced a lot of fears and dispelled them as being false by shining the light on them and looking at what they truly are and what I truly am. I'm able to dispel a whole plethora, years of fears. So if I feel fears, but I'm not afraid to be fearful. I'm not afraid to have fears.
Uh,
I just don't really give them that much credibility.
yeah, that's good. I think that's a very healthy approach to it.
Is that your experience as well?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and I think that's worthy of noting is just that people that I keep referring back to this place and time, that people who are numbing themselves out is that you don't have to be afraid of fear. The transformational journey is that you no longer have to be afraid of your fears.
Mm.
And that when you first started, and that when you haven't dispelled your first fear yet, you are running on faith. It's either against the evidence or without any evidence. You actually have to have faith and believe in something inside of you that feels good to be. And I think that's the hardest place. I think that's the hardest place in a transformational journey, is facing yourself and facing your fears in the beginning with no evidence that you're not going to be crushed or forever hurt, or that it really is, you don't know. You actually don't know. But there's a sense of you that's going, well, maybe this thing is not as, there's got to be something more. There's got to be something better. I was willing to risk looking inside, to risk, feeling what I was feeling and what I was afraid of, for what was on the line was a better life. There's got to be something better than what I'm doing now. And numbing out is just really not a choice. So, thoughts?
I think in our current situation that these numbing mechanisms, they're going to be less available and less effective. So then people are naturally going to be feeling a lot more. And then they're not going to be able to ignore it as they were able to before.
Right.
And that's,
If you're being forced in this next little bit to feel more than you're comfortable with, then I start having conversations with transformational people that are not afraid to feel fear, to show you what they're doing. There is a process. There's a process of getting your fear, the very small fear, the very first one. You face yourself. The very first rock or fear that you discover is a small one, and you can put that on the table and address it. And when you get a win with that, when you start getting some separation from that fear, when you stop believing it a little bit more, it gives you the impetus and the energy to go further into deeper fears. And when you get experienced with that, you're not afraid to have fear. I'm not afraid to have fear. I don't actually really believe in it. I don't believe in any of the fears. I can deal with anything. I can deal with the truth of what's going on and not be afraid. If it's actually happening, I can face it. If it's not happening, it's just a little, fallacy that I'm running around in my head. So I'm not stopping with this one. I'm actually going to focus on this. And if this is resonating with you, and you want to stop numbing out, and you want to learn the skill, the practice of being able to face yourself and deal with fear, I'm pretty good at finding the illusion or the lie in those fears. So I will be doing workshops, and I will be doing one-on-ones about that stuff.
okay. Now it's such a blessing, the current situation for us, to push us to looking at ourselves and working on ourselves and embarking on the transformative journey. So take advantage. Don't miss this opportunity.
I think the circumstances are pointing towards maybe we need to face ourselves a little bit more.
Yes.
So that has definitely come to light. I mean, the message that I got in the last couple of weeks, and definitely last night, was, yep, this is time. So anything, I don't know what our time is, but we're trying to keep these a little bit shorter.
Yeah. We're at 45 minutes.
Do you have any, like, to sum it up, or any really powerful last words? What would you say to end off this conversation?
Pain is your friend. There's nothing to fear about fear. And now is a perfect opportunity to learn how to face these things and level up.
Would you be willing, if people have a sense of you, I know some of the students, because we've done audios for the students before in the yoga teacher training, that know you, if people want to get sessions from you one-on-one on, say, WhatsApp, are you available for that?
Yeah, sure, I'm available.
Okay, and that I will be charging people if they can pay. And if people can't pay, I won't be charging people. So, but I will be, picking and choosing my schedule. So, but I'm available as well. So you can reach out to either Briat or myself or anybody else in your life that's on a transformational journey. They will be able to help you. They've turned and faced themselves, and they will be able to help you turn and face yourself. There's a process. It's safe, and it's their job to show you how it's safe and to be able to. But you have to work with them. I mean, they can't do it for you. You need to do the work of whatever it is that's got you numbing out. Let's, if you want to now address that and turn and face yourself, I think this is a really good time. It's a beautiful process. In spite of it scares the crap out of people, all you do is the benefits that I've got from turning and facing myself is just such an amazing experience of myself, of what I truly am, and being able just to be really in love with myself, to be really have love for myself, which is, almost weird. So any words that you have like that? Is it a safe process for you?
Yeah, it's a universal process. The stages that you have to go through will be the same for everybody. The details of it will be different according to the person, but the principles are the same.
Do you have, I'm going to ask a sneaky question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Do you have more love for yourself?
Do I have?
Do you have more love for yourself?
Do I have more love for myself? Then what?
Than when before you started the process, when you were numbing yourself out?
Oh yes, a lot.
And then do you have more love for you and everything around you?
Definitely.
So so there's dividends. The reason why I'm saying that is that what you get out of it is worth the risk. And get yourself around somebody that knows the path, and they can really make your journey a lot easier and fulfilling and shorter, so that you can start applying. It's a skill. You can start applying this skill for yourself.
Yeah. Right.
Anything else, Priyank?
I think that sums up very nicely. Thank you for the chat once again.
Thank you for the chat once again. I really appreciate you, Briat. Thank you for making yourself available and doing all the things that you do.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and to share my thoughts, and I hope it's some value for whoever listens to it can come.
Me too. Me too. It's valuable to me.
Yeah.
So there.
Thank you.
Live in life.
Till tomorrow. Haribol.
Till tomorrow. Bye-bye, my friend.